How's everybody doing today? Doug Weber, Anderson Safety. Um, just want to kind of do a little intro, kind of who I am and what I am, and so everybody kind of familiar with my knowledge base and everything. My name's Doug Weber. Like I said before, I'm with Anderson Safety. I've been with Anderson for roughly 2 years now. Started out with them doing some safety oversight for an EPA cleanup site. Prior to that, I was a federal firefighter at Fort Sill for 30 years. And in that time, I developed a lot of health and safety, a lot of training. Spent last 4 years I was there getting the federal fire systems health and safety program off the ground for Fort Sill and in the fire department. And in addition to doing fire service, due to of course, the fireman's curse where you have too much time off and not enough to do. I also owned and operated a concrete construction company that I took over from my father in and around Lawton. So I have spent a lot of time in construction. And I know the field, and I know excavation. I know equipment, and I also know safety. Seen firsthand what safety can do for you, and I have also seen firsthand what safety uh, does when it doesn't do for you. So we're going to kind of go through this a little bit here and talk about a few things, and we'll just work our way through this. Um, there's kind of a debate between safe versus compliant. Um, which is the one that you want to lean towards, and what is the actual benefit of one versus the other, and why they need to verse. You've got the rule of thought that's let's do things safe, and as long as we're doing things safe, then we have to be compliant. But if you've also got the world of, well, we're doing things compliant, sometimes it may be on the borderline of safe, but hey, we're compliant. And the big way, the tough thing is trying to merge those two and find a good place in this kind of gray area here where they can both coexist and work to complement each other and keep us safe, keep you guys, keep people out there in the field that are out there, boots on the ground, safe, doing what they're doing. But what is safety? What is safety actually? Uh, you know, Anything deemed safe by a person is just that person's opinion. You can say, safe all day long, but safe is what you call it, and safe is what I call it. So, that at the end of the day, it's just kind of you know, what I look at as safe, you may not look at as safe. And and given that, oftentimes there's disagreements between safety professionals. This isn't safety is not an exact science. Um, and a lot of times, just in locations alone, regions that you work in, areas that you work in, whether that is an area on a job site or an area in a city or an area in, geographically on a map somewhere, that can change. Instead of looking at it from an approach of, is what we're doing a safe thing? Is this safe? We should all start looking at it from an aspect of, you know, is this as safe as I can make it? What can we do to make this safer or make this the safest? Um, and when you look at it, on this chart, you've got unsafe acts. This is this whole blue area. This is all things that have been done and done, in an unsafe fashion versus, an unsafe condition. This is that's a pretty small percentage, 10%. And the uncontrollable, that 2%, that's the unknown, uncontrolled event that occurs that is just out of the blue, unexpected, and that's an even smaller sliver of the pie there. So unsafe acts always seems to be the one thing that um, kind of reaches out there. It's it's not a fringe thing. It is a I've been doing it this way my whole life thing. This is how I was taught to do it. This is the way I was trained. And whether it's right or wrong, that's why it falls out here in this big slice of this chart. Unsafe acts versus unsafe conditions. The question, if it's true that, why are most efforts geared toward unsafe conditions if both of them are unsafe? Why do we put so much emphasis, and why do we focus our, more attention on an unsafe condition versus an unsafe act? Um, we're human beings. Kind of how you answer that. It's easier to deal with an unsafe condition than an unsafe act. Um, a condition is something that you can look at it and recognize that what it is that's going on is not safe, versus trying to tell someone that what they're doing is not safe. And once again, you're dealing with personalities from all walks of life, and you walk up out of the blue and just tell someone, "Hey, you stop what you're doing because that's unsafe." A lot of people don't like that. They don't want to be told that what they're doing is wrong. Um, hey, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this forever. Don't try to tell me what I am doing, what I can do, and what I can't do. Uh, I've done this a million times, and everything's been just fine. So we lean towards a condition. If there's something that's going on and we see this in the process, or in the system, or whatever it might be, that we realize, hey, this is going on repetitively, this condition is unsafe. Now we can go to the drawing board and come up with a solution for that. And that kind of changes how you approach it. And a lot of times, if you can prove an unsafe condition, then a lot of times that makes it easier to go back and show someone that through the repair of the unsafe condition, or the fix for that, it may also correct the unsafe act. So, as that being said, let's talk now. Let's get into kind of the meat and potatoes of trench. And before we start that, I just want to say a couple things. One, uh, when you head out the door of a morning and you're on your way to work, and you leave your house, from the time you leave there to the time you get back, nobody's going to take better care of you than you. Uh, maybe your mom, uh, but you know, uh, sometimes she's not allowed to come to work with you. So you got to stop and think. I'm out here doing what I'm doing, and maybe somebody has my back, maybe they don't. So nobody takes better care of you than you. So when you get ready to start your day, keep that in mind. Take care of yourselves out here. Uh, we live in a high speed, low drag world, and you get wrapped up in what you're doing, and you've got to take care of yourself. And one, that's important. Two is, no matter what, somebody someplace loves you and they want you back. At the end of a work day, they count on you. Don't know who it is, sister, brother, cousin, uncle, mom, dad, boyfriend, girlfriend, maybe, Fluffy the kitty cat. I don't know, maybe Barco the dog, whoever is relying on you to get back home, they're waiting on you there. They love you and they need you back. And when that doesn't happen, you know, that just turns everybody's world upside down. So keep those two things in mind. Just, as you go around doing what you do, uh, lock those things in the back of your head. All right. This is Jose Venezuela. He was 48 years old. Jose was killed on April 10th, 2023 in Holdenville, Oklahoma. When this trench collapsed and buried him approximately 12 feet below ground, it took rescue workers almost 8 hours to recover him. And this photo was taken shortly before the collapse. You look at this trench and you see a lot of things that contributed to this. There's nothing there. There's nothing to keep this trench from collapsing. There's no safeties. There's no way out. There is, a depth that is deadly. You've got one worker down there, and all of the things negative in this picture. The one thing that stands out to me more than anything at all is the fact that someone took this picture. Someone was on that job site with him, and that was his safety. That you're your brother's keeper. And you know, the fact that this photo was taken and that this man lost his life minutes probably after that photo was taken speaks volumes to me. That's why I say, one, nobody will ever take better care of you than you. Um, you know, this was a guy that could have just as easily been told, no, you are not going to go in that hole. You can't go in that trench. We've got to get some kind of safety to so that if this thing decides to collapse, we can keep you safe. And yet, here's Jose with a shovel in his hand. Obviously, he's down there working, and the value that was placed on this individual's life is incredibly minimal. And that just really speaks to me. And I can't help but think that, if if that was if that was your friend or your loved one, would would you say something to them? Would you say, oh, wait a minute, first let me get a picture of you down there? Or would you walk up and say, why are you down there? We've got to get you out of there now. Get out of there. And I just can't get past that sometimes. We talk about on job sites, we talk about competent people, competent person. That's the person who's capable of identifying existing and predictable hazards in the surroundings or working conditions, which are unsanitary or hazardous or dangerous to employees, and they have the authorization to take prompt corrective measures to eliminate them. So you back up and you look at this picture, the competent person in this situation basically probably took the picture. And you see this, and then you read what it talks about a competent person being. That doesn't say anywhere in here in this definition that you have to have X number of years of experience, or you have to hold a degree, or that you have to be the job supervisor or the job work leader or any of those things. It says you have to be capable of identifying a hazard. And I'm pretty sure that most people that are out here working on these job sites and working in these trenches uh, are pretty well capable of identifying what a hazard is. Um, you can look at the top of a stove and see a red hot burner or a flame there. You're pretty capable of identifying the fact that that's not safe to put your hand on. And basically, if you can do that, you can be on a job site and you can see a hazard and you can identify it and you know this is not good. This is not something that we want to put someone in this situation and put them in harm's way. And you have the authorization to take prompt corrective measures to eliminate it. So at any point, you could say, hey, stop what we're doing. We've got to fix this. Uh, we have a collapse situation here, or we've got a guy in here that can't get out. How are we going to get him out? And you don't have to be at the top half of a job. You don't have to be the superintendent. Uh, so just know that at any point you see something going wrong, you can stop it. The duties of a competent person, inspect the excavation. Take a look at it every day. And after any time there's any kind of event that would maybe cause that to change, maybe that top of that trench uh, would shift or something, any kind of event that causes that. And, everybody usually thinks when you think of an event, you think rain or you think snow or you think moisture of some kind. But that could be any kind of event. That could be a thunderstorm that has a high lightning thunder volume and just the vibration on earth. It could be a high traffic area where you're next to a roadway or where you're on a construction site and there are multiple heavy vehicles going by in proximity to that area. It could be you could be crossing out through a field, a pasture or something, doing an excavation for cross country pipeline, and you could be working in and around a farm, and it could be a group of farm animals that are they're heavy. They get up close to proximity to where you're working. That could cause a change in your ground condition, and if that happens, you have to be able to identify that. You all you got to do is look at it and go, uh, oh, Betsy the cow over there, there's like 220 of them and they're kind of heavy. Let's keep an eye on this trench. Maybe this is going to put us in a situation that we don't want to be in. And it could be, any number of things. So don't tunnel vision into thinking that the only thing that can change a trench condition is a moisture event of some kind. Uh, that's just not the case. It is important that if you do have a moisture event, that you monitor your water removal equipment when employees are in the excavation. Though, if water is a situation, water is a dangerous thing, and it makes a lot of changes when you're dealing with underground. And man, that's one thing that if there isn't a water event, you definitely need to pay attention to it and take care of it. Um, Once again, the competent person, whoever that is, the designated competent person should have and be able to demonstrate the following. You need to have some training, some experience, and knowledge of soil analysis, use of protective systems, and requirements of 29 CFR subpart P. That's the OSHA 1926, 650 through 652, and also you'll find some of it in appendices A through F. Um, Now, once again, that doesn't lend itself to the fact that you have to be an out and out expert and college graduated to know these things. What it means is you need to be able to look at soil. You need to be able to know your soil types. You need to have training and knowledge, which is knowledge, doesn't always come from training. Knowledge is, that's time. You spend enough time in and around something, you become very familiar with it, and you can look at it. You can determine, hey, we definitely need to shore in this place, or regardless of whether yeah, this is a rocky area, but we have some layering going on, or we have something that's not quite right, and so you need to be able to identify those things. that alone, that sets you apart. You can be a competent person and be able to identify this and know how to correct it or what to do to fix it. All right, specific excavation requirements. There's some things that we need to look at there. As we go on, not all trenches are the same. And then you can, you can always look at them and as you lay out before you even start, you kind of you got to have a good idea. Okay, this is a big broad trench. There's not going to be a whole lot of cave danger or something that way. We're not going to have a lot of place where we're going to have people in there. So it'll be different how you approach that than say one long, narrow 14-foot trench that runs for miles. So just some places, that you look at, you identify that, okay, yes, it is by rights a trench, but not necessarily as hazardous or dangerous as, say, another type of trench. Some underground installations. Um, always locate prior to digging. Um, always certify deactivation. Anything that's there, make sure before you put anything in the ground that it is dead, that it has been deactivated. Uh, if it's something that's going to remain in the ground, make sure you protect it, protect around it. If it's something that, is going to you're going to take ground out from under it, always be sure that it has some type of support to carry it underneath to hold it. And if it's at all possible, always try, if you can, remove it, and then it's not a problem at all. And always remember prior to doing anything in the dirt, log into www.okie811.org 48 hours ahead of time and make them aware and give them the opportunity to get out there and let you know what is lurking in the underneath, because none of us, we're not Superman. We don't have that X-ray vision. So we've got to rely on Okie and know that they are going to do everything in their power to help us find what's down there, get it marked so that we have a good idea of what we're going to be digging in and around. Um, Talking about trenches again, access and egress or ingress and egress from trench excavations. These are the conditions for it. All right. If trenches are 4 feet or more in depth, you have to provide access and egress, entrance and exit. Um, they got to be spaced so that a worker will not have to go more than 25 feet of lateral travel to the nearest means of egress. So does that mean that if you've got a trench that is 25 feet long, that you have to have a ladder in both ends of it? Or does that mean that if you have a ladder in the middle of it, uh, that allows you to not travel more than 25 feet from either end of that trench to that ladder? And so as long as within 25 feet, you have access to get out, that's what you're looking for. Um, Whenever you set a ladder in a trench, it has to extend past 3 foot above grade. Um, you know, some people look at that and they question it, why not ground level? So that, you step up the ladder and your last step puts you out on the ground. 3 foot, what that does for you is that takes you to that 3 points of contact. And so no matter what, anytime you come up out of there, as you step off of that ladder onto your top ground and you're making that first step there on top layer terra firma, you still have a grip on that ladder and you have two hands on it and 1 foot still on it. So you still are maintaining 3 points of contact. Uh, sometimes you may have been down there working all day long. You come up out of a trench, you're hot, you're tired, you're exhausted, you've been in there working maybe all day long, and when you step up on that top step, maybe you get a little woozy, maybe you step on a dirt clod or something, and your foot rolls. Anything could happen that could put you right back down in that trench. And you know, whenever you can stand on flat ground and fall and end your life, uh, you definitely don't want to step out of a trench after working all day long and then wind up back in the bottom of it with an injury or a loss of life over it, simply because you didn't have anything to grab a hold of when you got to the top. So, always make it a point to keep that ladder 3 foot above. That's actual. It's guideline. It's what you need to do. It's how you have to do it. So, why something that is so easy is something that you would want to bypass anyway. It's not a difficult thing to bring a ladder up 3 foot. Uh, if you don't have a ladder that will extend 3 foot, then it's time to invest in one. It's time to go and spend the money or build whatever it is you need to build, whatever you got to do to make sure that your ladder is one compliant and that it goes up 3 foot past the edge of your trench. There it is right there. That gets you out of that situation. That gets you on the ground. And if you look around this ladder, look at kind of the dirt and stuff that's around this ladder. I would definitely want something to hang on to whenever I get to the top of that to make sure that my first couple steps go ahead and get me back away from this trench. They keep me moving, and I don't have to worry about falling back down in here somewhere. Temporary spoils. Um, you know, I don't know what's going on in this trench. It looks like maybe they've already kind of done some burying or something. But if you look down through this side of this trench where they're spoiled, where they're putting their stockpile spoil dirt, uh, they're doing a pretty good job of keeping this dirt back away from this trench. Um, it's clean. You've got a good, for the most part, you've got a good walking surface down through there, and you have enough room that if this thing decides to slough off up from the top up here due to wind, erosion, wet, whatever, it doesn't come all the way back down into this trench. That's always something that you got to keep in mind anytime you're working down in a trench. Somebody's stockpiling or spoiling right up next to that trench. Chances are you're down there working, one of those big old dirt clods rolls off, it hits you in the top of your bean. It's not going to feel good. Dirt's heavy, so you don't want it rolling in on you. This not a good view here. This is an accident waiting to happen. You can obviously see where some of the dirt has already come off of the pile and it's made its way back to the edge. And I'm sure there's probably some that is already sloughed off back down into the trench. So, as you're working in your trench and you're prepping your trench, your excavator, your backhoe, whatever the case is, uh, as you move that dirt, move it back out here, get it back out of the way. I would give myself a very good, clean working platform between my spoil pile and my trench anyway. Just because you never know if you need to be on both sides of that. You don't want to be over here if you're bringing pipe in or something and you're tag lining or something that way. You don't want to be over here trying to stumble over this. That just never ends good. You're falling down. You're paying attention to trying to pay attention to where you're walking and paying attention to what else is going on, and it's just never a good combination. So definitely keep your spool piles back. If you don't have a need for that dirt, haul it completely away, get it completely off the site. A lot of times that's a better fix yet. um, this is a 2 foot minimum right here. This is what it's requiring. Now, that's on that's on either side. That doesn't make any difference whether it's a sloped, whether it's a straight wall, makes no difference. Whatever it is that's going to be in and around this opening has to be a minimum of 2 feet away. I personally if I was working in a trench, it wouldn't matter to me how wide it was, especially if it's a V-bottom trench similar to this. I wouldn't want equipment. I wouldn't want them within 6 feet of where I'm working. Uh, Especially if it's just, something where they're loading out dirt or they're driving by on their way to another area, say to deliver something. I would build myself a good 6 foot perimeter, even I think around all of that. And then I don't have to worry about vibration from equipment. I don't have to worry about people bringing something in that are unfamiliar with the area and coming up on our trench unexpectedly. People coming in and out of a trench, and you have equipment within 2 feet moving. Uh, Boy, anything could happen. You might come out of there, and they might not see you before they're right there on top of you. They could hit you, cause you, some physical damage. You don't want that. So just make sure that if the more 2 foot minimum at least, but the more room you can give yourself and your workers, the better you are. Once again, that 2 foot does not mean that you know that is from wherever the edge of the dirt is at. Because if this dirt is backfill dirt, that does not make that an area that now you can drive over until that dirt has been, compacted or it has been filled and this trench is no longer this trench inside here. That 2 foot still has to come from where you have that undisturbed soil. Uh, it doesn't give you, an instant okay to bring whatever it is inside of this area where this dirt has been disturbed and then filled back. This dirt could still be influenced. So just keep that in mind. Now, by the numbers, you've got 2 foot, and 2 foot is the distance away from the excavation. The spoil pile, tools, materials, and equipment must be placed. Just a quick reference here, 3 foot, that's your ladder. That's whenever when required, it must extend past the top above the landing by at least 3 foot. Your 4 foot depth, that's the depth at which egress ladders are required. And at 5 foot depth, that is the depth that cave-in protection is required. Now, if it is 4 foot 11 inches, is it required? Uh, that is if it was me, it would be a yes. But if you can maintain that exact 4 foot 11 through the length of a trench and not be anywhere where you're at 5 foot, then you know I would say fine, you don't need it. But anything that for me, if I was anywhere near 5 foot, I would just go ahead and use it and be done with it. And unless you're working in a soil that is absolutely safe, and you're at 4 foot 8, 4 foot 10, then I think you'd be okay. And 20 foot, anytime you have a trench and you're going to be working in a depth of 20 foot, uh, that's the place where a protective system has to be designed by an engineer, by an RPE. Um, they have to come in and they look at it, they determine, they do the math, they figure out the weights, they figure out what it will take to hold back that kind of dirt. And that's the engineers, the ones that design that. They're the ones that, they work the magic, and they know what it'll take to do it. I definitely don't think you'd want to rely on me to do the engineering for that, uh, because 20 foot, a lot of dirt. I might steer you wrong. I might tell you, just throw a couple 2 fours down there and brace across it. You'll be all right. Uh, I would never do. Don't take my word for it. You find an engineer, you get below 20 feet. Boy, that's a lot of it's a lot of distance between you and the surface. So definitely have it engineered and make sure that what you're going to put in there for protection actually does what it's supposed to do. Let's look at some here's some protective systems talking about that, borderline of that 20 feet. Um, it looks like maybe this is maybe a bore operation going on here. And if you look at this, here's right here, here's their ladder set up for their egress point. They have trench box or wall protection here, uh, staggered down through there to provide cave-in protection all the way around this. They've got it in the end. See maybe some piling or something driven in here. They've got steel in the plate in the end of this. They've got trench box all the way across it here, supporting to keep that thing from caving. And this is a design system, I'm sure. And that allows them to get in here and work at these depths without having to worry about cave-ins. A cave-in protection. So just a little bit about that. No employee is allowed to enter an unprotected excavation deeper than 5 feet for any reason. So say you're working in a trench and you have the area you're working in is 4 feet deep. And right, 5 feet or less away from you, that trench drops down to a depth of over 5 feet. And you're done at the end of the day and you take off your hard hat to wipe the sweat off your brow, and your hard hat comes out of your hand and it rolls down into that 5 feet or greater depth. Uh, you good to go just to hop in there real quick in that deeper area and grab your hard hat and hop back into that safe area? No, you're not. Uh, if there's not some type of protection in there, don't go. There's no reason for you to be in there. And and a hard hat especially or a tool is definitely, if not the reason you want to be in there. There is no reason that you would need to be in there if it is unprotected. No reason at all. You have to stop and ask yourself, what are you worth? What today, what is my life worth? Put a dollar figure on that. And then after you look at it, you decide what you think your life is worth. Then you maybe you ask your loved ones what your life is worth. Ask a spouse, ask a mom or a dad or a sibling, a sister, brother, somebody that way. Ask them, what do you think? What would my life be worth at any given time? Just they had to cut you a check for me, how much would that check be? I'll tell you right now, there aren't enough zeros to put behind a number for what my life is worth. And that's the only approach I'm going to have about it. And there's no reason for me to want to put myself in a place where uh, someone would have to make that decision on what my life would be worth. Well, there's too many options out there for protective systems. There's too many ways that you can keep yourself and your people and your coworkers safe without having that be the decision. And you know, we've come far and away. So many advances have been made in protective systems. And all of the things that we talk about when we talk about trenches and we talk about excavations. Uh, the one thing that hasn't changed is dirt. Dirt is dirt. We haven't come out with any kind of synthetic blend. They haven't gone and replaced the top 15 layers of dirt with the new and improved AI dirt yet that keeps us all safe, that it's smart dirt. It knows not to cave itself in. Uh, Dirt hasn't changed. Dirt's not, we're not looking at any advances that's going to make dirt change. So what we know is that we bring advances into trenching, that since we have to deal with that dirt that we already know isn't going to change, that we can put in place and we can keep us safe. And, it has come a long way. Trenching, you use the first safeties, were a lot of it was just plywood and 4x4s. And those systems were rudimentary at best, but it was a beginning. And so now the options, they come out with so many things we can do now. Just the dirt alone, you can slope it. Now you can go in and we've got excavators and operators that are fantastic. These guys, whenever you can carry a raw egg across a terrain in an excavator, and these guys know what they're doing. They're fantastic at what they do, and they can slope that dirt back. They smooth it up, man. They make it nice, even slopes. And so if it's something you can slope, you got an operator, make sure you factor that in and just let them slope it. Benching, you know, man, benching, it's a time consuming thing if you have a big area, but benching is a very safe option. Um, you start in and you bring that thing up in increments of 4 feet by 4 feet or whatever, 5 by 5. And you bench it back to where if something happens and there's a rumble or a break loose at the top, a lot of chances, a lot of times it won't even make it to the bottom. You can shore it. That's once again, uh, depending on what you're going to be doing, how big your area is going to be. There's shoring out there now. There's so many different options. There's hydraulic shoring that you can put in place. Um, whether you purchase them, whether you rent them, whichever way you go, uh, there's always a way to shore it. There's always a way to bench it or slope it, and that alone just protects your people. Uh, if nothing else, end result, you can shield it. Uh, you can just go in there and completely continuously create a shield all the way down through it, and that way, no matter what, uh, it's not going to come in on you. They're designed to keep them from coming in on you, depending on your soil types. If you're sloping it, you got to, type A soil, and stable rock. Your height, you'd be vertical and up to 90-degree angle. A type A is a 3/4 to 1 inch at a 53-degree angle. Uh, Type B is 1 to 1 at 45. Type C is 1.5 to 1 at 34. And type A on short term is a half to 1 at 63. For a maximum excavation depth of 12 feet for less than 24 hours. There's a bench right there. You look at that picture and, in order to get to this place, to a place where in the bottom down here, they have a safe working environment. Look at the amount of work that went into this to get them to that point. All of this was brought back in these lifts, and that took time. And as you're looking at this, you might notice, you can kind of see it right here in this photo. This dirt has given. Excuse me. It sloughed right here a little bit. And the thing about it is that never reaches the bottom. It stops itself. It prevents itself from becoming a catastrophic thing that could have got down here and injured somebody as they were working in the bottom of this. So, that's an incredible example of a good bench. Here again, another good example of what happens when your dirt gives. It looks like, I don't know, maybe there was a water event. Looks like maybe there was some washing going on up here at the top in these couple of layers. And look how it brought this dirt down, but it never brought it down to a place where it was going to cause, someone down here working in the bottom area of this to be trapped or caught or struck by that dirt as it comes down. Um, dirt is not a lightweight thing. Let's look back at this real quick. Seeing that dirt slough off and thinking about the weight of dirt, I kind of reminds me back of here a while back. There was a deal that was going around on, I think it was like a TikTok thing, and it was called the Ice Bucket Challenge. And what it was kids would kind of raise money by taking a bucket of ice water and pouring it on top of somebody else's head. And I remember there was a video that they had that showed it was a dad that had filled up a whole backhoe bucket full of ice water, and his kids were standing under it, and they were doing the ice bucket challenge. And he dumped that water on them. And whenever they were standing like on a driveway or a concrete pad of some kind, and boy, when that water hit them, it just literally washed them out. And I thought, it was funny to watch, and it was kind of neat. But I started thinking about that. Can you imagine the dirt bucket challenge and how that would be if you filled that same backhoe bucket up with dirt and dumped it on someone? Uh, that is a lot of weight, and I guarantee you the results would not have been the same as it was with that water. Dirt gets very heavy very fast, and it can cause a lot of damage when it comes down on you. And when I see that picture, it kind of reminds me of that. But you look at the shoring that's going on in this picture, and it looks like maybe these are some hydraulic shores that they have put in place here just to hold back these sides to keep that dirt stable under this area of compaction or concrete. Maybe it looks like a street or something that they're working in here. And so these are spread across, and they're holding pressure against this dirt to prevent it from wanting to slough in. Um, this picture, there's some good things that you see in this picture and some bad things that you see in this picture. For one, personally, I wouldn't have my equipment this close to my edge, especially in a project where I, felt the need to shore. I would do everything I could to keep my equipment back out of the way, back out of the work zone that could be a vibration factor or something that way, even though it's shored up. Vibration could, break some of this stuff in these corners and stuff loose. So, always be cognizant of what you're doing and where you're doing it and what else is going on around it. Anytime you can give yourself distance with equipment on the edge of a trench of any kind, by all means, give yourself the benefit of the doubt. This here's some different types. This is what goes on when your soil starts to move. Uh, it can happen in any place. You get this arching going on. Uh, this is where your struts are holding against your walls, and what this is doing is this is putting pressure in those arch points and holding it back. Now end of the trench here. If you notice, in there's nothing, but you're working. These are the areas that you're working in, and you might be working away from that end, and so you don't have to worry about it being an issue. And how would how if you did have to do that, how would you support that? This would have to be supported with something other than a strut system in order to make that safe. This is kind of the same thing in action here. You've got a trench box. They're putting pipe in, and these are your work zones. These are your safety points. If you notice on this particular site at the very end here, it looks like they've got some sheet piling or something driven in the end, and that's what's supporting the dirt from being an issue in the far end of that trench. So this is just one operation where they, are working. If you notice right here, by where this gentleman's standing, this is the top of their egress, and they're in the distances that they're working in basically is not more than 25 feet from where this ingress and egress is at. So they have a pretty safe environment here that they're working in. And this just shows that, this is what shielding does for you. This is how it works to keep your workers while they're down here in these areas working safe and being compliant. Here's the tabulation data. We're not going to go super deep into this because this is just one, and it's a brand, and each brand, everybody that has a product out there is it's going to be different. It's going to give you their basically their stats on it, and so this is just kind of a general rule on what it would look like. This is something you would want to see. You would want to have this. If you're going to use, especially if you're the owner of a piece of equipment, this is something that if you get a hold of it, this you keep. You put this in your files. You know what your equipment is, you know what it's capable of doing. And always keep that fresh where if you need it, you can go to it. Anybody have any questions? Whenever it comes to trenching and it comes to excavating, um, there are so many things that can go into it that you know a lot of times you don't prepare yourself for it. Um, one of the things that I learned early on is that you don't have to be completely buried in a trench for that trench to cause you a death. Where I'm from, I live down around Lawton, and there was a contractor that was working in an area in Lawton. It was late in the day, and uh, just two people on site. The company just had two guys working late. One of them was down in a ditch, in a trench, wasn't a very deep trench, and the other one was on a piece of equipment. It was a depth that was deep enough that it should have been shored. It should have required some shoring or some boxes or of some type to keep that guy that was down there safe. They were just wrapping up their day, and the trench caved. It gave. It did not bury him all the way. It buried him just above his waist, just kind of between his waist and his chest. And they, of course, he couldn't get him out. So they made the decision. They did a 911 call. This was before cell phones. He had to leave the site to make the phone call. Got the phone call made. 911 showed up. They determined that the soil was very unstable. They could not get equipment to it, and that he was going to have to come out there by hand, but they had to set a perimeter up. And this is something that you need to keep in mind. Anytime you see that big red truck show up on a site, um, it's no longer considered a rescue at that point, people. They're going to consider that now. That is a recovery. And when emergency services show up, everything slows down because emergency services operate on the assumption that they're going to take care of themselves first, because it does no good if they go in to try and get somebody or help somebody and they become part of the problem. So always keep that in mind. 911 is going to get there and they're going to do everything they can, but they are going to slow it down and it is going to become considered a recovery and not a rescue. Regardless, they determined on this particular deal that they were not going to be able to get this guy out without putting down some planking, putting down some area to work from. They got the guy out of the trench. They got him to the hospital, and due to compartment syndrome, they amputated both of his legs. And just a couple days later, he lost the fight. He lost his life due to it. And the thing about it was, this was a person that the entire time they were working to get this individual out was awake, alert. He was talking, walking, doing everything he needed to do. Yes. Yeah. 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 I, I'm I'm just gonna talk through it. Okay. And you know, the bad part of it was, a guy that was doing just fine and really showed no signs of anything that was gonna, you know, cost him his life or anything that way. And less than a week later, uh, he lost his life due to it. And that goes to show you that even though someone is not completely buried alive, and you have to dig them out that way, that everything is going to be okay. Never ever take for granted a depth, and never take for granted that oh, it's just a little bit over 5 feet. It will be okay, because you absolutely you never know whether it will be okay or it won't be okay. Assumptions on a job site are one of the biggest things you can do wrong. Uh, and you just don't want to put yourself in that situation. And whenever you decide you're going to do a trench, and your trench is going to be, a running, it's going to be a running process. It's not just going to be a trench that's a one deal. You open it, you do what you got to do, and you close it up. Say this is going to be a trench that is going to run the distance of a city block or two city blocks. Um, you're going to be there a while. Always make the option. Always choose on the side of, if your equipment is questionable before you start it, just make the decision before you start. Let's double check our equipment. Let's look at what we're going to use. Let's get this done right the first time, because I promise you, if you have never ever been to court over an injury or a loss of limb or a death or something, uh, you if you've never experienced dealing with lawyers, uh, you need to understand that's a whole different world. And lawyers get paid good money to do what they do, and they're very good at what they do. And something goes wrong and someone loses a life or loses a loved one or is injured permanently, for, debilitating, that they can't work from now on. People want someone to point a finger at. Um, they want someone to pay for that. And you go to court over a deal like that, and you sit down and you go in there with the assumption that, well, they're going to ask me a few questions about uh, construction or what I saw on the job site. First question they might ask you is, do you own a dog? Well, yeah, I own a dog. What color is your dog? Oh, well, I have a cute little brown dog. It's not a medium big dog, about a medium sized dog. Oh, okay. Well, what color? You say you got a brown dog. What color is your dog? Brown. Well, it's kind of a tan brown, so it's a lighter brown colored dog. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, you know, what they're going to do is take what you just told them and say, well, you know what? You're not a credible person because you first told me that you own a brown dog. Now you're telling me you own a tan dog. And so the rest of what you have to say absolutely means nothing. And that's how lawyers work. And that's how courtrooms work. And, you know, ladders are expensive. I get it. Trench shores and trench boxes and operators to do benching, all of those things are time consuming and they're expensive. But like I said before, you want to talk about expense, tell me what a human life is worth. And furthermore than that, just tell me what it costs, what a lawyer is by the hour, versus a ladder. I'll take a ladder anytime. Um, there's too many variables that come into play uh, when you're doing trenching. I don't know, how many of how to even determine soil, but there are, you take the three classes of soil and you look at your soil types before your projects ever start. You determine, okay, this is a class A soil, uh, but even though you're working in that class A soil, the first time you disturb it, you move it, that changes. Now it's not class A soil anymore. It can be anything else, but it can't be class A soil anymore. So you've got to look at the entirety of a trench project. Can you have an excavation that's not a trench, or a trench that's not an excavation? If you take dirt, you take a shovel full of dirt and you move it, and you just dig it out of a hole, one spoonful of a shovel, and you move it off to the side, uh, you've excavated. And that soil cannot be whatever the classification was before. If it was A, even that shovel full of dirt, that dirt it can no longer be classified as A. So when you're getting ready to do a trench project, you need to have somebody that, can determine your soils for you and that can adjust on the fly depending on, what those soils are. In 100 feet, you might change soil 2 or 3 times. And once again, you open a trench and you have great conditions, and then storm clouds roll in and they start filling your trench up with water. Okay, well, now what do we do? Well, you can pump your water out and you can wait for it to dry up and you can go back to work. But you've got to completely double check your soil. You got to go back. Okay, we had good class A soil, but now we've had a rain down in this trench. It changes everything about that. Uh, you may have to wait now. You may have to stop and go find some shoring. in order to, to safety your personnel that are going to be working in that soil from there on. Even if prior you didn't need it because the depth didn't require it, now all of a sudden you may have to. So uh, there's so many variables that fall into play whenever you start working uh, down in the ground. Uh, Time of year, uh, you're working in a trench, and especially look at us in Oklahoma. You start looking at your employees and who you're putting in a trench to work. Um, Man, at a depth like that where you still have direct sun impingement, uh, it has a greater impact on a workforce that's down there where there's not a good airflow. A heat exhaustion takes over. Uh, you know, Take the weather condition of rain, and you've been working and it starts a good rain and you don't have good slope. So you get water buildup in your trench. Do you want to put an employee down there while water's on the rise, even to start working to pump it out? No, you don't want to do that. You don't ever want to put a person in a trench when water is coming up. Uh, look at water in Oklahoma. 90% of it looks like chocolate milk. You can't see through it. You can't tell what's going on in that trench. Uh, you don't know if whatever it was you're working on, maybe it was a pipe or something in that bottom, and when the water got deep enough, you couldn't see it. It may have caused it to shift or move. What was one place may not be that place anymore. An employee could step off in water that's on the rise in the trench and get hung up, and you don't have a way to get the water out. You don't have a setup yet to where you can evac that water out. And now all of a sudden, what are you going to do? You got to figure out, you know, how to keep that person alive. You could be an Olympic swimmer trapped in the bottom of a trench with water on the rise and still not make it if you don't have the capabilities and the equipment in place to prevent that from happening. You get the water out of it first. You let your conditions stabilize, and that's whenever then you can determine, okay, we need to change what we're doing. We can keep doing what we're doing, or we're going to have to give this a little more time and completely reevaluate. Um, Water does strange things to dirt. Dirt does strange things on its own. You could have a trench that you've been going great, and you've been working in it for 2 or 3 weeks, and then suddenly you have this cave off. Well, what in the world caused that? We haven't changed anything. Everything we're doing, is the same as we've been doing it this whole time. Yet all of a sudden, there's a space in this thing the size of a, light duty truck that just fell off in the ditch. Dirt is dirt, once again. And nothing about it has changed ever. So you got to pay attention to it. It's got a mind of its own. It's going to do whatever it wants to do. And you take something that it could be a farm pond uphill from where you're working, or it could be a local, water line utility or something that may have been leaking for years and nobody even knew about it. And originally, it wasn't seeping in. You didn't know it was there. You didn't know the leak was there. And then all of a sudden, you step off in the bottom of your trench, and the bottom feels spongy or squishy all of a sudden. And uh, that's new. What are we going to do about this? What caused that? Is it a hazard? You need to know. You need to be able to look at that and determine. Take your soil analysis, and you've got to go back to that just good old fashioned on the job, uh, just identification and paying attention and know that we haven't seen this. Everything was right, but now we've got to contend with this change. And if you don't constantly stay on top of that, it's those little changes, it's those little places that you least expect it, that whenever that change occurs, will be that one thing that kind of jumps up and bites you. So always be aware of it. Always know that, your change is the thing that you cannot predict. Um, you may have to set up a pump system that will still allow you to continue to work, but you may have to set up an incredibly elaborate, you know, pump system to keep the water out the entirety of the project. Wasn't that way when you began. You may be working along and all of a sudden you dig into, you know, just absolute stone. Uh, you've been working along and moving, keeping your shoring, your trench boxes, or your, whatever your security method is, uh, moving right along, and all of a sudden you run into an area that is just solid stone or solid sandstone or something. Uh, does that have an impact or a bearing on how you approach that trench? It absolutely has an impact on it. Um, you have to all of a sudden now where you could pull your trench box along with you as you come down through there, and your dirt was a little bit forgiving. Now you have an area where, well, we really need to secure it because we're not sure what the next thing is going to offer, or what the next thing is going to pop up. So we don't want to take chances with our people in the trench. So let's keep these boxes moving with us as we go, but it don't slide so easy through that stone, through that area where you have that shale rock or whatever it might be that you encounter. So no matter what, now you have to stop. You have to consider your condition. You have to back up and change what you're doing. Um, you don't ever want to put people in those situations where they don't have adequate PPE when they're down there working either. You know, uh, you don't want someone just to bail off in a muck and muddy situation to go to work and not have the proper equipment. Jumping off in there in a pair of tennis shoes, or a pair of low top composite toe work boots or something that way, that you don't know what is in that ooze that they're walking around in. It could be they might have an open sore or something somewhere on their leg or something. And you need to stop. You need to look at those conditions. You need to make the changes and slow down and keep your people safe at all times. Uh, you working in a trench, you definitely, whether you have a built-in, set of hand signals, or whether you're using a standard set that all people use, whatever it is, make sure you've got a good form of communication. Make sure that if you're working in and around a trench, whoever's running an excavator or something that way, uh, make sure that you maintain eye contact with them if you're on the ground. You're down there working, and that don't necessarily mean they can always see you. That don't necessarily mean that they know everything that you're fixing to do and what your next moves are. Uh, Make sure if you've got equipment in and around that trench, that where they're setting up and what they're doing does not put any coworkers in harm's way. Whether it's just they're relocating to get a better work surface, or relocating to get a better viewpoint, or to be able to, bring in pipe or something down into an area where it's needed. or bring in rebar or something that way to stockpile it in the bottom for the people that are down there working. Whatever the case may be, if you've got equipment operators and you've got people on the ground, definitely make sure that they have some form of recognizable communication with each other, that it's agreed upon before they ever start in that trench. If they don't, uh, somebody could give the wrong hand signal, or somebody could not be paying attention and think that somebody did something or said something that was a go when it wasn't a go. You swing a piece of pipe off in a trench and it rolls down in that trench, uh, and somebody's got their back turned to it and it hits them. You know, oh, it's just plastic pipe. Ah, big deal. Uh, Pick a piece of that stuff up sometime on your own. That pipe is dangerous, and it'll hurt you bad. It'll hurt you quick, and you don't ever want to put your back to somebody that's working with a piece of equipment, even if it's they're craning it in from a different, area, from another distance away. You make sure you've got someone that knows that you're in that trench, that you're working, and that has good eye contact with you. If you don't do those things, um, it could cost you one of those afternoons, in a courtroom trying to explain, what went wrong or what happened. Um, I talked about the 2 foot earlier about your equipment, and when you have people working in and around, say, a large construction site where you may have multiple construction companies working in that area, and your part of that is underground, your part of that is trench. Um, and I would always, first things first, I would always say, build your barriers. Uh, Create your traffic plan that you're going to present to the whoever the general contractor is. Let them know that, primary, we're going to keep our people safe. We're going to take care of our people first. And anytime you're going to have open trench, make sure that other delivery companies know on a daily basis that this is where we've got open trench. It may be, you may have to put up uh, just some good orange fencing, just some good construction fence to prevent them from, getting close to you. You may have to put up cones. A little bit of flag ribbon may, a little bit of flagging may do the trick. But then again, you might have to go in and set Jersey barriers or something, and build yourself a perimeter around where you're working, especially if you've got soil conditions that, small vibrations cause a problem. Uh, Once again, a little tell on, kind of where I'm from, down around Lawton. We had Fort Sill, and back in the, up until Desert Shield, Desert Storm, 3 Corps artillery was literally the home of the artillery for the Army. And you know, you couldn't go out and dig anything in the ground, and that artillery would be firing, and it was a constant issue. There was constant caves. There were constant places where trenches sloughed off, because when those things made an impact, man, they would shake the foundations of houses blocks and blocks away, and that's blocks away from the boundaries of the installation. And so, that was a contention that anybody working in and around London, they had to contend with that. And we knew automatically, look, we're gonna dig a big open hole, we're gonna dig a trench or a opening for a cellar or something that way, that we would have that to contend with no matter what. In addition to that, we always knew, oh, we got the dirt down there was horrible red clay. And just over the course of the 2 months of, July and August, whenever the heat would get intense enough, it would start to literally dry that ground out. That clay would dry, and as it would dry, it would just start to crack open. it would break open sometimes, 8, 10, 12 inches wide. And that wasn't, something that if you weren't familiar with that area, you would even think about. And so no matter what, anytime we were dealing with a hole, we did everything we could to give ourselves plenty of room, because a little bit of weight sometimes would have been all it would take to push, something that was 4 or 5 days ago, great dirt, didn't have to worry about it. Now it's busted open, split open, and just a little bit of encouragement, and we could lose a whole side. And those were things that, in sandy areas, I know in and around, there's areas up in and around Chickasha in Oklahoma where, you got a lot of sandy loam area. Uh, Sand, you can take a cup of water and change the dynamic of sand. And, a good rain, a good snow, people underestimate snow and ice in construction. Snow is every bit a factor impact on dirt and soil and trenches as rain is. It's a little sneakier because it soaks into the ground at a slower pace. You don't have near the runoff in Oklahoma that you do with rain. So it might set in an area for a couple weeks as it melts off, and everything around it in that same 2 week time has since dried up. You can drive on it. It has, it's solid underneath. It's not soft anymore. And then you come into this area where this snow had laid in the shade for a little while, and all of a sudden, you can't hold it up. It won't stay up. You start bogging through it. It starts caving in. And when you start looking at it, you notice, oh, everywhere there's shade down through here in this excavation or this trench, we're going to have to do something. We're going to have to change our approach to it. We may have to go in and do some extra benching, or we may have to figure out some way to do some shoring, or we may have to change, you know, the date. Maybe we got to back our completion date up and give all of this stuff a chance to dry out to where we can get in and do what we need to do. And you know, as you go and as you work through it, you're going to constantly run into variables. And no matter what the variable is, the key factor in it is always going to be, um, the human aspect of it. And you you need to kind of give everybody a carte blanche whenever it comes to discussing those factors that change. Nobody has dumb input. Nobody asks a dumb question. Whenever you're dealing with people working, in an open trench or in an open excavation, uh, anybody that has an observation, it should be you need to take it seriously. Don't don't underestimate what people see simply because uh, they may have only been on the job for a day and a half. Uh, some of the most valuable input you could get is from somebody that literally knows nothing about construction even. They're scared to death, but they see something that doesn't look right, and they may be the one that day that picks up on something that nobody else even thought about, because you know today's the day that everybody's busy. We're getting all this stuff done. We're trying to get going, and we don't we don't necessarily need to slow down and look things over. We've been here for a while, and you've got somebody that has a brand new set of eyes looking at what's going on, and that they might notice, man, there's this big old fissure back here. And I literally sat over here the other day, uh, while I was, waiting to do my part, and it wasn't there. And if somebody happens to speak up and mention something like that, there's, there's incredible value in that. So don't dismiss somebody. Don't blow off somebody that has a question or a comment or a concern when you're dealing in and around uh, a, a trench area or an excavation area. Um, know that, anytime you got people that are interacting with, with trenches, with hazardous areas, uh, they're the ones that are putting their lives on the line. They're the ones that are down there doing what they're doing. Don't discount, anything that they have to say or anything that they notice or pick up on. Um, I watched this is kind of it kind of summed it up for me here a while back. I watched a video, and it was of a guy, and all you could see in the frame that it showed was a man, obviously standing behind an excavator. He was in a trench, and he was working very vigorously on a piece of pipe, and someone approached and asked him what he was doing. He said, "I'm down here putting this piece of pipe together." And the guy, it was in the off screen in the video, said, "Well, why are you doing that? I thought you had an apprentice." And he said, "Oh yeah, I had an apprentice." And the guy kind of chuckled, and he said, "So why isn't he doing it?" So, "Well, I fired him." And the guy chuckles again, and he says, "You fired him? Why'd you fire him?" And he said, "Because I told him to get down here and fix this and put this pipe together. And he said, I'm not getting down there. There's no shoring, and I'm not going to put myself in danger." And the guy started laughing, and he said, "Yeah," he said, "this kid's been on the job for 5 days, and he's trying to tell me how to do my job." And he was obviously upset, but he was also obviously working in a trench that was about 5.5, 6 foot deep. And that hit home with me, I think, probably as hard as maybe anything in a long time has, because you know you see every side of how things work whenever you're working and trying to do things, and also trying to do things safe. And uh on the one hand, you've got a guy that I'm sure was probably the owner of a company that had probably agreed to do a task in a certain amount of time. And he had obviously hired someone to help him because he needed to, get this project done. And he knew, he couldn't be omnipresent and do it all. And so he had to have someone helping him. And so he puts, he puts a kid to work, a young person to work. And the very first thing the young person sees isn't the completion date or the amount of money that's going to be made at the end of the project. He doesn't see, a company's reputation on the line. Uh, the only thing he has to hold on to, and the only thing that he can focus on, is himself. And what he saw was where he was being asked to work was not safe, and refused to put himself in harm's way to help this person that literally just gave him a job, that literally just hired him, and was giving him a shot at learning a trade. uh and that speaks volumes to me, because you never know what situation you're going to encounter. You never know how you're going to approach that situation when it comes to you. And, you know, you you have to stop no matter what, anytime you're working with trench, anytime you're working with all of the variables that come with a trench construction or an excavation construction site, and you have to weigh them, and you can't let emotion, and you can't let human factor other than there are humans, there is life. That has to be priority one. Um, and once again, these are not things that I take lightly. When I growing up in concrete construction in and around Lawton, we did commercial and residential. Everything you could do wrong on a job site, I did wrong. Uh, Everything safety wise in the 70 early, early middle and late 70s and early 80s, safety safety was not number one on anybody's list. And, you know, that was how I operated. And safety wasn't, you see the funny stickers, safety third. And I always just kind of dismissed it. Uh then I had the opportunity to become a firefighter. And the thing that you realize is that safety has to be number one. And if you've never had to experience it, I pray you never do. The loss of a friend, the loss of a family member, the loss of a coworker, especially whenever it is due to something that could have been prevented, in and around uh, a job site or a trench, that an extra day would have prevented. And I understand, when you sign on the line as a contractor to do a job, you sign everything on that line. Your reputation, your living, uh, everything about who you are and what you are goes on that line when you sign it. And you say, you know, 6 months I'll have this project done. That means 6 months you're gonna do everything you can to have that project done. And a day sometimes ticks by and you grit your teeth because that's a day that you've given up. But I can't emphasize this enough. I just can't. There's no time on a clock that's worth someone's life, because something goes wrong and something happens while you're on that job site and somebody gets hurt or somebody loses their life. I promise you that one day that you lost to stop and make things safe will turn into weeks. It will turn into months. And for somebody, maybe you, it may turn into a lifetime, because you're going to relive everything that went on. You're going to relive that over and over and over. And, uh, a day is is a very small price to pay sometimes. A couple days is a very small price to pay to make sure that when you put people in harm's way, you do it in a safe manner. And yes, there are ways. I mean, there's you're not gonna be on a construction site in your entire life that you're gonna go through that whole site and maybe possibly never, you know, do something that you might consider sketchy, maybe. But you can do something that might be somewhat unsafe, but there is a safe way to do it. And take the time and stop and fix it and make it the most right you can make it whenever it comes to the people that are working, the people that are actually out there doing that task and getting it done for you. And, you know, that that's just something that you should take that as good sound takeaway from what Oki's given us the opportunity to do, to sit and discuss some of these things that you might encounter while you're out there working on job sites. And maybe change the prescription on your glasses to provide a little bit of focus on those things that you know most people don't have the time to stop and give much attention to. Um, listen to your people. Whenever you do your morning briefs, you know, uh, whenever you ask them if everything's going good, if there's any complications, or if there's anything about that trench that doesn't seem right, or if there's anything that they mention that, hey, we need to, if you got a minute, I really need you to look at this, or we need to stop and really, lay eyes on this. Uh, I strongly recommend that that is where you want to put some time and effort into it. You want to stop and listen to them. They're doing the same thing you're doing. They're doing their dead level best to take care of that project just like you are. And they know the same things you know. They know that, time is of the essence. Their paychecks are absolutely dependent on it, the same as, your living is dependent on it. So uh they have comments or questions or concerns, uh, you know, give them the impression that that is valuable. Uh, make them aware that, there are no dumb questions. There are no, you know, uh, comments or concerns that can wait till tomorrow. If they feel like it's important enough that they want to discuss it, discuss it. Stop and talk to them about it. Um, with that being said, I'm gonna turn this back over to Luis there with Oki, and I just wanna end with the same thing I started with. Ladies and gentlemen, nobody takes better care of you than you. And when you're out there doing this, uh, just keep in mind somebody someplace loves you and they need you back at the end of the day. Uh, and there's not a dollar value that you can put on life that will ever be worth that life. And I appreciate your attention today. Uh, I'm gonna turn it back over to Luis at this time, and I think he might have something he wants to discuss with you or something that way. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.